Alrighty, guys, welcome back to iCoach Nutrition Radio. Super excited to dive into today's podcast. Please excuse if you're watching the video here, this sunlight. I know that obviously you can barely see me here, but we're just going to make it work because got to get this podcast knocked out here this morning. So what we're going to do here is we're going to dive into the subject of how to help manage your stress. All right. And so when we start to break down stress, we essentially have got we've got good stress, we've got bad stress. And what we're going to really talk about today is kind of how to find the sweet spot, if you will. Okay. Because too little stress can keep you from reaching your potential, as well as too much stress can harm your health. Right. And so it's this continuum of essentially seeing, less stress to more stress and seeing decreased performance to increased performance. Right. And so it's this wave of, I'm bored. You start getting my attention. I'm rocking it. I start to freak out, crash and burn, right? And so it's this continuum, if you will, of stress and kind of this stress curve, if you will. All right, so let's break down the difference essentially between good stress and bad stress. So stressors from work deadlines to raising kids to workouts, these things aren't intrinsically like good or bad. And your response to each one of these is unique, right? Every single time, dependent upon the experience. So positive responses, these things would look like feeling inspired, energized, motivated, focused and alert, exploring your edges of your comfort zone, balance, stress, rest, recovery, and like learning, growing, and getting stronger. All right. So these are all examples of positive responses. Negative responses are going to be, and again, this would be reference to something like a work deadline, for example, or working towards a goal, right? And so negative responses would be feeling weak, worried, demoralized, feeling distracted or scattered, not challenging yourself, not getting enough rest or recovery, seeing your cortisol levels, that stress hormone or adrenaline going up, experiencing muscle loss or fat gain over time. And then also dealing with like blood sugar, immunity, metabolic, sleep, sex hormones, getting disrupted, right? And so when we start to look at, how do we handle stress, right? There's different types of people, right? Some factors are intrinsic, but most of this you do have control over. And so when we start to look at, what are the things that are more permanent versus some of, what are the things that essentially can be shaped or built? We've got a breakdown or kind of a comparison of essentially, more stress tolerant people versus less stress tolerant people. Right. And so when we start to look at these different categories in terms of what are more permanent, these would be things like your genetics, your history, your current stress load, your environment. And then as we kind of start moving more towards what can be shaped or built, this is a support network. This is your coping ability. This is your attitude, right? And so if we look at the definition of basically more stress tolerant people versus less stress tolerant people, when we come to the more stress tolerant people, these are going to be people that are stress resistant, right? They're very practiced at handling stress. Their current stress load, they consider it moderate. They're often outdoors and in nature. They spend a lot of time with loved ones. They have a strong support network. They're able to calm themselves when they feel emotional. They're very, kind of go with the flow attitude, optimistic, proactive, confident, agile. They view stress as essentially a challenge to rise to rather than something that's, debilitating there. And then on the opposite end, we've got less stress tolerant people, right? So they're much more stress prone. They have little practice with stress. They have a very high or very low stress load. They often are in like clinical or industrial spaces. They have little time with loved ones. They have a weak support network. They feel overwhelmed by emotions. And the attitude around it is, essentially they have trouble adapting. They're pessimistic. They're reactionary. They're not confident. They're paralyzed, and they essentially they view stress as a problem to avoid. Okay. So when you're kind of looking at this breakdown or listening to this here, you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, am I more stress tolerant? Am I a more stress tolerant person or a less stress tolerant person? Right. And so when we look at, stress being something that can be good or bad, if stress is too low, this can have us feeling, lethargic, bored, unfocused, directionless, purposeless. And then if stress is too high, it can have us feeling anxious, obsessive, depressed, panicked, flailing, stuck or numb. And so if we think about kind of that sweet spot, just right? You think about the three bears example, right? Too hot, too cold, just right. So with this, it's like just right would have you feeling energized, engaged, and interested, actively moving towards your goals, actively learning and growing. Okay, and so that's kind of that sweet spot that we would love to be able to prioritize and live in. And so when we think about reaching your potential without crashing and burning and kind of looking for inspiration and energy, step one is setting effective goals, right? So we have to set goals that motivate us, right? We have to set goals that are specific and measurable. We got to set goals that are challenging and realistic. We got to set goals that are broken down into small actions, right? Essentially a big goal, reverse engineering it into the small goals that get us into that place. We have to be focused on the process versus the outcome. And we have to document these things as a plan of daily, weekly, and monthly behaviors. Right. And so step two is going to be start with one action each day. Right. So commit to it for the next 2 weeks. Be sure it's something you're confident that you can actually do every day. Right. Because we have to start building these daily habits, right? And these daily actions. And that's what ultimately gets us into accomplishing our daily goals, our weekly goals, our monthly goals, our yearly goals. Okay. So number three is going to be tracking your progress, right? And so making sure that you're documenting your behaviors, your processes, your outcomes, right? How do you feel different? Right? These are some questions you could ask yourself. How do you feel different? How do you look different? What have you learned? What are you proud of? What frustrations did you have? And then number four, I would say what arguably, and this is what I do, working with clients, is what bridges that gap between the knowing and the doing is accountability, right? So step four would be actually make sure that you're spending time with a coach or a mentor, right? Getting help from someone you admire, who is willing to hold you accountable. This just makes the process of change and growth so much easier, right? Me, myself, I've worked with so many coaches. I'm currently working with a coach. I'm a big believer that coaches need coaches, really that everybody needs a coach, right? Because there comes a time where you realize if you were going to do it on your own, you would have already done it by now. And so that's why if you want to continue to have this mindset of personal growth and becoming the best version of yourself, you will continuously work with coaches, because coaches are going to be what bridges the gap and helps you to continue to excel as a person, and to fully be able to reach your God-given potential in life as you go throughout that journey there. So if we think about for rest and recovery and some of these activities that can help to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, which means these are the activities that can help you, feel less stress, help you to relax, right? Help you to be able to make that shift from being in a sympathetic state, which is kind of like that fight or flight, to a parasympathetic state, which is like rest and digest. So these parasympathetic activities could be broken down into things like going for a walk outside, getting like moderate sun exposure, enjoying nature, listening to low-key music, getting a massage, practicing like a deep breathing exercise, laughing, snuggling with a loved one or pet, yoga, slow stretching, easy swimming, a hot tub or sauna, having sex, non-competitive play, mindfulness, meditation, green tea. Those are just all examples of that. And so, things like being on your phone, like screen time, this is stimulating, and this is going to be, sometimes people who get on their phone as like a stress relief, right? I if I'm watching the kids and when they finally go down for a nap, sometimes you can find yourself just on your phone for, an hour, 2 hours there. And it's just because it's like this escape, but it's stimulating, right? So it's not actually offering any type of stress relief there. A big category is going to be in meditation. And so this is a hard practice to get into, but meditation is something that, really boosts the immune system, and improves sleep, your mood, and emotional regulation, circadian rhythm. It's proven to lower blood pressure, heart rate, stress hormones, inflammation. It supports the development of new brain cells, neural connections, and gray matter. And it helps to sharpen focus and mental clarity and attention, memory, recall, even when not meditating. Number three, and a really big one here is getting outside, right? And so we have tons of research supporting the fact that being in nature lowers stress hormones and heart rate and improves mood and immunity, right? So these things give you motivation and energy to cope with your next challenge. Number four, and obviously this is a big one, something that I really push is balancing an exercise routine. Right. And so, you don't have to sit here and be in, some gym rat that's in the gym 24/7, but being active on a daily basis and really prioritizing daily movement. Right. So exercise relieves stress by increasing blood flow, getting you outside, burning calories and stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system. The most effective is a mix of intense strength training, conditioning, cardio, and low intensity recovery. And when stressors are up, we want to make sure that we're decreasing intense exercise, because again, intense exercise puts a bigger stress on the body. And when we're not stressed, right, when these stressors are down, then we can increase it and we can do more high intensity exercises. And then number five, and potentially the most important, depending upon who you are and who's listening to this, practice self-compassion, right? This is a great reminder for me and for probably everyone listening to this, which is we've got to make sure that we're asking for help and support when needed. We've got to make sure that we're investing in hiring in a coach when we feel stuck. We've got to make sure that we're investing in hiring and getting counseling if you feel helpless. We've got to know your limits, and we've got to make sure that we honor them. We've got to make sure that we're unplugging at least once a week. And so these are all examples, and this is kind of the breakdown of stress and just how to help you to manage stress. And so I hope that this was helpful. I hope that this just kind of gives you some insight, gives you some ideas, helps you to create some awareness. And again, apologize for this lovely lighting situation that I have here, for those of you that are watching, but just wanted to get this done and get this knocked out. So anyways, this is how to help manage your stress. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions at all. Again, when I invite anybody that's listening to this on the podcast or YouTube, please go to Facebook and search I Coach Nutrition Family. It is an awesome community of education and support. I have all the clients in there that I've worked with over the last 10 years, and they are in there. As well as clients that I'm currently working with, and they're in there sharing their takeaways, their focuses from week to week. There's tons and tons and tons of free resources in there. And ultimately, it's just an awesome community of education and support. So if you're looking to kind of filter out the BS in the nutrition industry, if you're looking to try to get away from the fad diets and the cleanses and the detox pills and weight loss surgeries and all of these things, and you just want to learn how to live a healthy lifestyle, you want to learn what are the things that actually matter most, right? What are these lifestyle habits that I really need to put my focus into? Things like sleep, things like nutrition, things like exercise, things like hydration, things like stress management, personal development, right? Well, then that's the group for you to dive into. So search it, find it, request to join. Would love to add you in. And other than that, thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. And until next time, thanks, my friends. See ya.